Welcome to the G.A. Carlson Lime Kiln.
Hi, we're standing inside the central chamber of the G.A. Carlson Lime Kiln at Barn Bluff that was constructed in 1882. It was one of many lime kilns that G.A. Carlson operated in the city of Red Wing during the city's stone industry, which was from the mid-1880s to just after 1900. This structure is listed on the National Register of Historic Places along with Barn Bluff, but this one is individually listed. The City of Red Wing has just completed, or just about to complete, a preservation of this structure with a generous grant from the state of Minnesota through the Historical and Cultural Heritage Fund. And as we wrap that up, we're moving into the next phases of improvements with the master plan for Barn Bluff that will include some interpretive signage here and a ADA accessible route to the kiln for viewing. The structure itself was used to make lime, which was basically the early cement of the day in the late 1800s. Stone from Barn Bluff up above the quarry would be brought down by cart and dumped into two chambers on top of the kiln, and they would heat the stone to at least 2,000 degrees to make the chemical breakdown of the stone into lime. The box behind me here, along with two on the outside, actually is where the fire would be. They were stoking the fire 24 hours a day again, and up above is the chamber that the stone was dropped into from the top. Out on front of the kiln are two chambers that were considered to be poke holes. That's where the workers would stick iron rods into the chamber and pull out the lime for packaging. The lime industry in Red Wing was really important, obviously, for the city of Red Wing, but it was also important to the region and the state of Minnesota. This structure alone produced lime that sold all over the upper Midwest. G.A. Carlson actually had a retail presence in Red Wing, St. Paul, and Minneapolis. So the stone that came from the quarry up above and his lime that he produced here were shipped all over the upper Midwest and were important in the development of not only Red Wing but Minnesota in general. And as we went ahead with our grant application to try to restore this structure, the Minnesota Historical Society in the state of Minnesota realized that this isn't just an important structure for the city of Red Wing, but it's also an important structure for the entire state of Minnesota, as very few of these lime kilns, especially one of this status and size, remain in Minnesota. In Red Wing alone, we have 3 known kilns that are still in decent shape that you can observe, but this by far is the highlight of what we have remaining in Red Wing. It's been long known that this structure was in a deteriorating state, and the city of Red Wing was able to go ahead with this preservation project with a large grant from that program to basically stabilize the structure to make sure it's still standing here. Obviously, because of its nature, the lime kiln, it's not a structure that can be reused for a new use. So it's just to preserve this part of Red Wing's history and a big part of our stone industry, which very little evidence is left today, with the exception of the quarries that you see on Barn Bluff and Memorial Park. The main part of the preservation project was the total repointing of the whole structure. Over the years, mortar between the stone had deteriorated. We had leafy plants growing out of it, trees, and it was adding to the instability of the structure. So that was the first thing that the contractor did for this project, was to repoint the entire structure. We had a structural engineer come in and review the stability, and we also did some work on the top of the kiln that has been silted in over the years, and we made sure that some sinkholes up on the top were addressed, and basically just made sure that the whole site was stable and safe for the public to continue to see, and to also preserve the structure for future generations. Now that we're wrapping up the preservation of the structure, we're moving into the next phases of the project, which is being wrapped into the master plan for Barn Bluff. What you'll see we'll be doing over the next several years is creating an ADA accessible trail to the kiln site that you'll be able to stand in front of it, observe the kiln, and actually learn about the history of the kiln, Barn Bluff, and G.A. Carlson himself. And we'll also be looking at adding a possible trail spur on top of the bluff to view the the chambers up atop and how they would get the limestone down the hill and into the top of the kiln. The preservation of the structure is really the first step in many projects that you'll be seeing over the next few years on Barn Bluff. I think this was a great project and a great partnership with the state of Minnesota to preserve this for Red Wing and the region.